So when we record these, we're going to start putting them up so that they're accessible to people who are missing it week by week by week. We're not exactly sure how we're going to host that quite yet. Might end up being a YouTube channel, might be somewhere else. So if you just don't want to be on the camera, if you don't want to be on, just turn your camera off. It's not a big deal at all. I have no problem talking just to Christian and vice versa.
Yeah, everyone loves hearing me. Just kidding. So thank you for that note, Travis. So first and foremost, everyone, thank you so much for your time and joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. A lot of you folks either know Travis, myself, or both of us, right? And having the opportunity of learning more about cybersecurity, shooting the shit, talking a little bit about information security, right? Career building skills, technology building skills, all that kind of stuff, right? And so it's really fantastic to see like what we're doing together and what we're building together here, right? And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to make this something that would be able to grow and scale and be more repeatable, right? Something that would provide a greater amount of value to a greater scope of individuals, right? And so we made this InfoSec coaching and mentoring page, which is also going to include all the content pages that we've been creating for like, you know, when I did like the IoT pen testing, right? Or we were talking about like the career skills and what Travis is going to hit on tonight in regards to certifications, right? So all that content, right, is going to be reusable and shareable and all that kind of stuff for people to leverage and utilize, right? So a core element of our organization is being open and making information accessible to everybody, right? You can go to the Go Vanguard GitHub and there's tons of open source stuff, right? These trainings are not about Go Vanguard though, right? So what Travis and myself and the rest of our team who happens to work at Go Vanguard joining and whatnot, it's legitimately people just wanting to put good into the world, right? And honestly provide a lot of good tips and tricks for people, help other people as they're building their career skills, as they're building their cybersecurity and technology skills, right? Avoid the pitfalls and the bullshit that we've had to go through, right? To help make other individuals successful as well, right? So this is not one, you know, we kind of have like a breakdown of like the house rules, what this is, what this isn't, right? What the structure is, all that kind of stuff. But we do want to just kind of remind people what this really isn't here, which is we're not doing a paid boot camp. That's not what we want. That's not what we're interested in or anything like that. This is also not a sponsorship, right, of Go Vanguard or anything like that, right? I don't get paid more. Travis doesn't get paid more. Nobody gets paid more, right? We do this after hours on our own time, right? And so that means that even after a stressful day of work, right, we still want to put good in the world. We still love working with, you know, all the fantastic folks like you guys who are motivated and whatnot. It puts a lot back into our buckets, right? And makes us happier and whatnot. So that's really important for us, right? So that's what we really get out of it, right? This is not, but also at the same time, not a pipeline for hiring people or anything like that. If there's the opportunity of working with people in the future, fantastic. That's awesome. That's great, right? But at the same time, while I would love to hire everybody in the world, that's not what my organization has in regards to resources. And also sometimes the pieces just don't fit together, right? If things happen to fit together, great, there's synergy, great, but that's not what this is about. That's not the objective of these exercises, right? And vice versa, okay? Also, this is not supposed to be a lecture series, right? If you guys want a lecture series, right? Hey, Mike Myers does fantastic content on Udemy and all that kind of stuff, right? This is supposed to be a bit of a lecture format with more conversational, right? A lot more Q&A back and forth, challenging each other, having some fun at the same time too, right? So it's supposed to be interactive. And then what Travis just was saying in the beginning, which is really important, is so we want to have it where we can post some of this stuff like online for other people to see, to leverage, to utilize. So it's like, hey man, I missed, you know, last week, you got the recording for it. Someone can go back and get the recording. But what that means is we also have to balance with people's own personal individual privacy and whatnot. So if it's recorded, that means everyone who shows up in a little box here right now with their webcams on, right? And when you go to speak up and talk, you're being recorded, right? So we also want to be considerate that when we're being recorded, right? You know, like the way I speak right now, being for the most part off the cuff and cussing a little bit, that kind of, that's perfectly fine. That's perfect, like not a problem at all. That's how I speak with a lot of my customers, and they're completely cool with that. People like it when other people are just genuine and personable and whatnot, and they're human beings, right? But we obviously want to be professional, right, with one another, right? And some important elements is like, well, like, hey, we may have fun and we may joke and we could even pick on each other a little bit, and I make fun of myself and all that kind of stuff, right? We also want to make sure that we're always being respectful of one another in regards to there are some folks here who have a lot more expertise than other individuals, right? So that means that sometimes when an individual who has less expertise goes to speak up and answer something, right, they might have like a situation where they might be incorrect about something. That's perfectly fine. Failure is important. People should encourage failure and learn from failure, right? What we don't want, though, is, and even myself, I remind myself of this, is that when we go to chime in as someone who may have a little bit more expertise on a particular domain or subject, right, not coming off condescending, right, or making other people feel bad about that, right? We're all here together to learn and grow, right? Even the folks who have a little bit more expertise, right, they learn and grow. Even Travis and myself learn and grow from this, right? So we just want to call this out. So we dropped the hyperlink in the chat. It should be accessible to everybody here. Take the opportunity to review it when you have some free time, right? In regards to just the house rules, what this is, what it isn't, general FAQ. This is what we were able to slap together basically in an hour time, right? So we're going to continue to put more into this. We're going to continue to grow it a little bit more, but we just kind of want to take a moment to kind of call that out. Any big questions or concerns?
All right. Then jumping into it. So when we do those surveys week after week, a couple ones that we got that was reoccurring was asking about what courses and what certifications are worth your time. What are the ones that are going to be give you the best bang for your buck, right? Because there are a zillion of them out there. I actually saw someone share it on LinkedIn today. Some organization actually like ranks them all and organizes them all every year, and there's 460 of them in 2022 that are still active in the cybersecurity space. So that's asinine, right? They're like cryptocurrencies, right? For every 2 or 3 ones that are legit, there's like 55 scams out there. So what we're to go through here. I made a diagram of kind of the skills tree, skills progression of a cybersecurity engineer, predominantly from the red team side of things. Though there is some touch bases into purple teaming, white box, and even a little hint on GRC. I got Jason Connor on our team give me a little advice on that one this morning. We're going to take a look at just some things that I recommend in terms of what certifications go along with those skill sets, how to approach that, and then also a couple of them to just steer clear of. But this is just my opinion. There's a million different ways to go about it. There are a lot of different certifications that are very similar to one another, and it's shooter's preference on a lot of those things. So we'll take a where's my diagram? Oh, here's my diagram. Okay, so there's a couple other things in here, and you all have access to this page as well. We got the table of contents. These are 2 links to our GitHub. Most of you, I think, have seen these resources in some form before. We've got the InfoSec Encyclopedia here. This is an absolute monster of a document with resources from everything from lock picking to static code analysis and everything in between. It's a lot, but it's a good reference. If you're looking for something specific, do a quick Control F on there, and you'll at least be pointed in the right direction. The getting into InfoSec guide is a sort of a smaller scaled down version of that. A lot of the things are a little bit more curated towards that more entry route in. But where we'll spend most of the time tonight is talking about this rather elaborate diagram here. And just polling here, do we want me to zoom in, or is this good enough for people to be able to see it?
Maybe
I can see it well.
Okay.
Yeah, so the badges I can see, but the text may be a little hard to see.
Okay.
Yeah, I bring it in maybe another 25%. Now, I see you added a bit more to this. This is actually derivative of our skills tree that we did for some of our growth plans for staff members.
Yep,
So
exactly.
So
Christian, do you know how to zoom this in Notion? I guess I can just make it bigger.
Try.
Yeah, I'll just make it bigger.
Control. Oh yeah, there you go. Bing bada boom.
Yes, this is a skill tree. So one of the things that Christian does for the engineers, and Blake as well, is kind of maps out the career progression of us as individuals, and kind of assesses where we're at skill wise, what are our next plan skills to get, and makes a good plan for us to go forward and getting that. So I took that and just started to brainstorm different certifications that I've looked into, I've taken myself, or I've seen a lot of people speak highly of in regards to different things. So if we start out here on the left, there's a security and networking baseline. They're kind of smushed right up to each other, and they're both in green. Really, you're going to need both of those in order to build anything from it. And what's really important here is, don't take this as me saying you need to get these certifications in these order. I'm saying these certifications tie up to this particular skill, and you need to get to that skill. So a lot of times people will be chasing the certifications for the resume fodder and all of that, and there's a place for that, certainly, depending on your situation. But as Christian's talked about, I think a little bit last week, it's really important that it's the skills that matter, right? It's not just the piece of paper. Now, one caveat to that is significant is if you have a security clearance or you have any intention of doing anything with DoD contracting, there is this neat little thing called DoD 8570, which basically says if you want to do anything in information assurance for the government, you will have one of these certifications, because the government doesn't care what you know. They care what you can prove somebody told you once. So if you're going to do something in cybersecurity for the government, by far the easiest one to get that covers most categories is the Security Plus. So you'll actually see a lot of government positions or private companies that do government contracting. It'll say like Security Plus required, or you must get it within 6 months of hire, something like that. A lot of times that'll also be tied with like secret security clearance, top secret security clearance, or be able to submit to the investigation for one. That is why. In every other case, we're looking really for the skills. And in order to build those baselines, there are a lot of different ways to do it. The CompTIA ones are what I typically recommend people. For the Security Plus one, just to get the lexicon of security. If you're very new to the field, if you're switching into the field, there's just a lot of different terms, a lot of different acronyms, and you need to be able to kind of understand that to build up into the more complicated things. Else, you're going to be spending so much time Googling, it'll be just a Herculean task to get through anything else. And the Network Plus, kind of the same thing on the network infrastructure side. If you were going to take those, it's generally recommended to take the Network Plus first, because the networking is the hardest part of the Security Plus, most people say. I did Security Plus first, and then networking. It was fine, and there are free resources for both of those, as well as some inexpensive ones. And I'll just scroll down just for a quick second. Down here, I've actually got all the certifications that are in the diagram categorized with what type of exam it is, the cost, some links, training resources, and if there is a relevant Try Hack Me path, I have that in here as well. So we won't harp too much on the specific resources that go along with them. Moving back up. Now, depending on which path you want to go, there's kind of a couple different directions of this diagram. There's the up into the right, which is into your traditional penetration testing, which is focusing in here on reconnaissance, open source intelligence, vulnerability scanning, the PNPT for penetration testing, networking, traditional, into web applications, mobile, APIs, and progressing through there. The other path can kind of go down to the left and down, is focusing more into the purple teaming, more of the corroboration, where you're working hand in hand with the blue team, where it becomes very, very important not only to be able to perform the tests, oftentimes to something like the MITRE standards or things like that, but also to be able to communicate really well and cooperate really well with their blue team and offer some remediation recommendations that make a really good sense. So at that point, especially when you talk about maybe white box on cloud analyses, it is not just about how can you break into Azure, but it's also how can you help them fix those holes in it. So that kind of plays into that a little bit more, into where we end up progressing in here towards the GRC type of a realm. Now, so we'll start up here at the top. So after we have the network baseline is not just the the protocols and memorizing ports and knowing what TCP and UDP is and knowing what the OSI layer is. That is all really important. But some things that sometimes get a little bit understated is it's also really important to understand Linux and Windows servers and Windows desktops. And one thing you'll see on here, the MCSA, that's Microsoft Certified Server Associate, I think. You're not going to see that on anyone else's roadmap because that certification doesn't exist anymore. It's totally deprecated. But why is it on here? Because Christian and I have pen tested organizations this year that are using Windows 2000 and Windows 2003 servers for critical things. So just because Microsoft doesn't give you a certification on older server infrastructure anymore does not mean it's not important. It's still really important to understand the ins and outs of that, to understand how it works, how to configure it, how to maintain persistence on it, how to create persistence on it, all of those kind of things. And same on the other side with Linux. The Linux ones recommended in here are really on the fundamental level with Linux Plus, and then there's the LPIC, Linux Professional Institute course 1 and 2. In the past, the Linux 1 and Linux 2 from these guys and Linux Plus were all sort of the same thing, in that they had a relationship where if you got Linux Plus, you automatically had the other two. They've kind of diverged a little bit because of CompTIA's epic quest for more money. But it is largely the same general training objectives on it. You could also take it and look more at the Linux server side with some of the Red Hat specific certifications. But one of the things I didn't want to do too much in this diagram, and that's also the reason that there isn't a whole bunch of Cisco certifications on here. Not that they're not important, they're awesome, but they're very vendor specific, and typically when they're very vendor specific, they're very expensive. And I believe the Red Hat ones are substantially more expensive than these little bit more generic ones. So if we go up here into the next kind of step towards the penetration testing path, I have the Pen Test Plus on here. This is really the same category that you would used to see the CEH, the Certified Ethical Hacker, a lot of times. And CEH has had scandal after scandal after scandal. EC Council, the people who make it, everything from like rampant sexual harassment in their organization to literally plagiarizing their tests to leaking and selling dumps of data of questions to people who are then selling access to those dumps of questions. So their reputation is really so tarnished. If you've already got it, great. If you're looking for it, you probably have a better return on investment from a neck tattoo at this point than the CEH. The Pen Test Plus test is the same thing, right? Now, the CEH has the practical one and it has the multiple choice one. Pen Test Plus is the multiple choice one, but they're progressing in really the same type of learning objectives. Difference is Pen Test Plus is like $350 and CEH is I think like $900. So you also have that difference. Now, one thing that is important to note, and I noted down there in the table, is which ones of these certifications are testing you on how good you are at taking a test, and then versus testing you on what your skills actually are. So far, the ones that we've talked about, all of these are multiple choice tests. And yeah, CompTIA's got the performance questions, but they're multiple choice tests. The performance questions on those are very narrow. They're not that robust, and you're only going to get a small handful of them. When we start to move over here, especially into the more advanced penetration testing ones, they're all completely hands-on. These are ones that you're either in a robust lab environment or you have a very simulated type of experience, and you have to do those skills hands-on. So the first one that we'll talk about here is the PNPT. This is a fairly new one. It's by TCM Security. If you've heard of Heath Adams, that's him. It's a very good course. It's called the PEH Practical Ethical Hacker course. It's on his website. I've got a link down below. They're actually running a promo until Monday where that course is $1. And that is phenomenal because I think Dane's taken it. Michael, looks like you've taken it as well. It's actually very good. It covers a good amount of OSINT, external penetration testing, internal penetration testing. That his bit on Active Directory attacks, I think, is the best resource I've ever seen for that particular thing. So whether you take his cert or not, $1, it's worth picking that up. He did just announce that starting, I think, sometime in September, it will expire. It'll expire every 3 years, and you got to submit continuing education credits. That's pretty much industry standard for all that stuff. The way that particular test works is you get a VPN profile, and you do external reconnaissance on some site that he's got made up. You break in externally, then you've got 5 days. 5 days. It's not proctored. You can look up anything you want. You can check your notes like a real pen test. You can do it however you please. You don't have to stay up for 24 hours like the OSCP and just keep slamming on it. You have 5 days to do the testing. Then you have 2 more days to furnish a report. And then this is what a unique part of this one, I don't know is in any other tests, is you actually have a 15-minute period where you then have to formally present that penetration testing report to somebody on TCM staff, which I think is pretty cool. It's also pretty expensive. It's like $350. I think you get 2 attempts for that, and they never expire ever. So it's pretty cool. Similar vein, the EJPT is by INE. They have a lot of different courses on all different kinds of stuff, not just their own certifications, but they've got courses for Network Plus. They've got courses for all kinds of cloud stuff, Cisco stuff. They have tons and tons of things. The EJPT is eLearn Security Junior Penetration Tester. Very similar to PNPT. It's shorter. I think it focuses a little bit less on external aspects of it. You do still have a couple of days to do the test, and you do still furnish a report. No presentation on that. If anyone's familiar with Mike Miller, one of those cybersecurity influencers, he's right in cahoots with INE. I think he writes a bunch of questions for him or something like that. So also very good. I would say too that if you are going to do either PNPT or EJPT, the training material for the other one, vice versa, is a really good overlap. And the EJPT one, if you get a student pass for INE, it's free. Now it means student in the sense of somebody like learning cybersecurity. It doesn't mean student like you don't have to be a college student with a college ID or anything like that. That's not clearly defined anywhere, but that is their intent that they put out in messages many times. Now, another one of the more traditional big name certifications that you hear about all the time is the OSCP, and it's for sure still the most well-renowned in terms of it's got the weight of the name, right? They've had a few changes to it over the years. Now there's a lot more of a focus on Active Directory than there was before. Here's the thing with this one. It is wildly expensive. It is, I think it's like $1,500 or $1,600, and that's before you pay for the training. And they also charge you tremendously for the retests. They make a stunning amount of their revenue off of retests. And the longer that you spend studying, the more you pay because you get charged per every, I think, 90 days on the lab. So my recommendation is if you work for an organization that offers a training budget or will pay for certs, OSCP is a great choice. If you're looking to just build those particular skill sets, try one of the ones that costs like $300 before you sink $2 or $3 grand into an offensive security one. Just my opinion on that. Into the web app pen testing side of things, the EWPT is just like the EJPT. It's just web application specific, and it's got a lot of really good content and labs in there. That one is not free. You do have to pay. I think it's like $30 or $40 a month for the individual membership to INE. So still pretty reasonable for the training. And then I think it's like $300 for the certification there as well. The EMAPT I added on here. I don't know anybody who's ever done it, but I don't know any other mobile application penetration testing certifications either. If anyone has any notes on that one or knows anybody who's done it, I would love to talk to them more about that to see if it's something I should keep on here or pull off. But I have heard a lot of really good things about Portswigger's fairly new certification on their tool Burp Suite. And typically we wouldn't recommend you just hone in so specifically on one single tool. There's a lot of tools in the tool chest, right, for doing any of these things. But when you're talking about web, mobile, and API testing, you can't really get around Burp Suite. It's fairly ubiquitous in the way that it's utilized, but also in progressing for this particular certification. It's all lab-based in their own lab environment. It's very inexpensive. I think it costs like $100. You'll learn everything that tool can possibly do, and they're very high quality labs. There's not any stability issues that I've heard of for anybody like that. So it's definitely would be a good way to supplement or even prepare for either the EWPT or the EMAPT, because you will get an understanding of those packet tampering and manual analysis and that type of thing. Scrolling down into the more advanced ones here. You have the EWPTX. That's like the Superman version of the web application one. It's the web application extreme. kind of in the same vein as the OSWE, which is the Offensive Security Web Expert one. So that's the same people as OSCP. This is just their web-specific one at a more advanced level. And there are others as well. There's GPen, there's GPen Extreme ones as well. There are many other options. And if you are interested in exploit development, Offensive Security has one for that one too. And I think you can actually get a 10-year ARM mortgage to pay for this particular certification here. Down there.
Hey, Travis, one of the
Yeah.
next training sessions, you got to do a whole expose on the corruption when it comes to like e-learning and e-certifications and shit like that. One of the things that's not covered in here that I did research in the past on, but it was just incredibly enormously expensive. Like I think some of these folks were just saying like OSCP is like pretty expensive and whatnot. Like that's a couple, I think what that was like a couple $1,000, but
Yeah.
I remember looking at the past at like GIAC web app pen tester and whatnot, and that was something like $10,000, right, to pursue a certification. And so it does get deep and it does get way more expensive. So this is still scratching the surface, guys, and this is more practical stuff. So the OSCP is more the practical and lower cost stuff compared to like what can still be out there. Even things like I had it's very infrequent we have other companies ask us about our certifications, but I have had one ask me if we are CREST certified, right? In my understanding, I haven't done all the research on CREST, but that is one of the more expensive ones comparatively.
Yeah, definitely. Andre, let's see your comment here. If you think that's expensive, look at the SANS courses. Yeah, there's no SANS on this page for that exact reason. We'll go down here onto the bottom just to wrap up the little diagram on here. We talk about ransomware simulations, purple team exercises. I have it on here first to focus on the Office 365 cert, the MS 500. That's your security administrator one. Yes, there are a lot of different web security providers out there. There's Proofpoint, there's Memecast, there's a whole bunch of them. I would say Office 365 is probably the most common one that we see by a wide margin. And it's typically the one that will come up most frequently. And then we go into the white box analysis with regards to the cloud. And then we have the references to some relevant ones for Azure and AWS. And typically hand in hand with a white box analysis or a risk analysis like that, there'll be the components that are the hard technical risks, and then there'll be also the components that analyzes the policies, procedures, documents, the process as a whole, the patch management process, right? The technology refresh life cycle, the disaster recovery plans, all of those aspects, which you're going to find a lot of that more into the higher level, slightly less technically deep diving certifications like the CASP or the CISSP. That's really where those shine. That's what they're for. So whenever you see people on LinkedIn, bitching and moaning about the junior pen tester job requiring the CISSP, that's nonsense. It's just it's a different realm of what should be expected versus that requirement. And this this is actually an E. Their font is just goofy. The OCEG over here. These are more GRC specific. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on that or at all. I do have it referenced down in the table below if you want to take a look at that as well. So we've got a couple kind of recommended paths, right? Depending on what you're particularly the most interested in, what would be the way that it makes sense? And again, like I said in the beginning, I'm not saying that you have to get all these certifications or get these certifications in this order, but one thing that you can do, which I do quite a bit, is when I'm looking at the different like next skill block I want to get in the tree, or next thing I want to get a little bit better at, or areas where I know I'm a little weaker at, I'll look at the certifications that are relevant to those particular fields, and then I'll pull up the course objectives and the actual learning objectives and see what that course is actually on. And I'll scan through it and I'll be like, yeah, I feel pretty good about this. This one's for Pen Test Plus. I'll be like, I look through like, oh, Packet Storm, I don't really know what that is, or VLAN hopping, I don't know what that is. It might be worth taking a look at some of the material for that particular cert and just going to those areas that you're a little bit weaker on versus taking the whole thing and sitting through and memorizing 40 hours of things that you're already pretty confident about just for the funsies of taking the test. It depends if you're doing it to really build your skill set or if you're doing it for resume fodder. You got to make that choice up on your own. But this is an approach that I take quite a bit. I've definitely shifted away from pursuing the certs just to collect shit on my wall to actually learning in the skill set. 'Cause I know I came from the government background. I came from where all that mattered is that you could prove that you were in the course. It didn't matter if you learned a thing from it. So I was always like, oh, I have to get the piece of paper. I've kind of grown up out of that mindset a little bit, so it's a little bit less important to me here. But I think we pretty much went through and kind of talked through each one of these particular paths. So these are really here more for a quick reference in a different view. And then once again, down in here, we've got the little database explaining what category it is. You can sort in here and filter by the types. If you want to look at ones that are just web app specific, you can make a filter for that. It's very easy. We've also got the cost on here. Now, these are the costs just for the test. If you're doing something that has the test plus the training, that's coming right from the vendor, it will be more. Most of the training resources that we have in here are either very inexpensive things on Udemy that have been effective for people, or things on YouTube that are just free versions. Like if you're doing Security Plus or Network Plus, Professor Messer's got it for free. You can pay Mike Myers $10, or you can do it for free at Professor Messer. I would say both because Mike Myers is pretty cool. But this should be a good reference. And then down here, right at the bottom, we've got this other little database that I've got here for different TryHackMe room evaluations. This certainly is not every room on TryHackMe. These are just some of the ones that either I've done or some people that I've been working with have done, and I've gotten their feedback on it. There are a lot of them on TryHackMe that anyone who's used it knows are very good, and there are a lot of them that are just time sucks trying to find that obscure footnote in the random log file that is totally irrelevant so that you can find the key to get the points to go to the next page. Try to avoid those as much as I can. And there's also ones that are just completely broke, because some of them are made by TryHackMe and are maintained, and some of them are made by the community and are not maintained at all. So if there are ones that are just non-operational, I try to mark those off in here as well. That's pretty much what I've got for you guys. If there are any questions as on why I picked some of these versus left some of them out, or if Andres or Michael or Dennis, Bob, if you guys have anything you want to add on terms of maybe what certifications you think are the most worthwhile, some that you've taken or had experience with that weren't quite up to snuff for you, would love to hear your input on that.
I'm just psyched you don't have that garbage CEH up there. That's all.
Thank you.
My guys are walking around plagiarizing all that stuff. It's crazy. It's crazy stuff. And schools are still teaching that stuff. I just graduated out 2 years ago where they were teaching CH course, CHFI too, believe it or not.
Was that WGU?
Yeah.
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 Small.
Yeah, I've got a master's from there too.
I love Wreath on TryHackMe. It's the best room ever. It's a good.
That is a cool room. That's a good room for Active Directory, I think, right? It's a Windows server. Yeah, that's a cool one. All right, guys. Well, if there's no questions on that piece, we can certainly do an open forum here, and we can pick Christian's brain on anything else that might be security related. Or Christian, if you had any other topics that you wanted to go into.
Well, here, let's open it to anybody who wants to just shoot the shit. You guys got a question, right? And then I'll fill the space with just talking.
Yeah. So I have a comment.
Yeah.
So I look for training all the time, and one of the things that I've seen is sometimes the security companies are starting to offer training. So one example is Black Hill Security.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a series of courses that they provide on different topics. And they're not that bad. So luckily, I think the prices I've seen are about $400, $500, $600. And they include like 12 months access to their training platform, whatever they call it. So do you see any values in those? Based on the syllabus, it looks like it's good training, but I haven't pulled the trigger on that. I don't really want to, waste my money. If
I'm not familiar with that one from Black Hills. The only security company that I know has put out some good stuff lately is TCM Security. But yeah, I've used other stuff from Black Hills before. They've got a couple good cheat sheets. Like one of my bookmarks is their Hashcat cheat sheet. So I like some of their content, but I just can't speak to the efficacy of that stuff.
So there are some. So it's a bit mixed, right? So like Black Hills, as like their training content and whatnot, I think that they've created a lot of cool tools that they've open sourced. They've created a lot of great content. They even have like they have like a card series that they created. I think this was them. You want a quick second?
Something in breaches is what I remember.
Oh yeah.
Doors and breaches, right? To like pick things up and learn. So like really cool. I really like that enthusiasm, that kind of stuff, right? I have not personally seen actually the quality of like their actual services or that kind of stuff, so I can't say to that, right? That being noted, I mean I really like, you know, what they're doing in their approach to things. The fact that they're charging for it, I think probably, I mean, at the end of the day, people, if they're investing a lot of time and resources into something, they have to have something to compensate them for it. It makes sense. I don't know a lot about the domain of boot camps and training and what the pricing structure looks like. So what looks like somebody who's price gouging versus someone who's providing something that's a legitimately valuable offering or anything like that. I would certainly trust them over a lot of other peddlers, though, right? I would put them like at the 80 percentile comparatively, right? There are only a small other handful of cybersecurity companies that I consider really, really good. Like, for example, Trail of Bits creates a lot of great content, right? A ton of fantastic content, right? They created some really cool tools like the Algo VPN, that kind of stuff, right? Which piggybacks off of WireGuard, that kind of stuff. And I think that the folks at like Praetorian have done a couple of really good things, and I think that NetSPI has created a couple all right things. That being said, that I've also never been someone myself who's done structured learning. I've always just kind of been the type of person where I pick something up, right? I set it on fire. I figured out that I fucked it up about 10 times in a row, and that's how I've always learned it, right? So there's certainly a lot of value in a structured learning format because it helps people avoid the pitfalls of having to basically learn something the hard way 10 times in a row and burning tons and tons of time. How much did you say it was for Black Hills?
I think it was $549 last I checked.
$549.
Yep.
For how much? How many hours? How much time? What are you getting on
I think most of them were between 14 and 16 hours.
Honestly, it's a pretty solid deal, I would say. I mean, if
Yeah,
you just
it seemed reasonable to me.
Yeah, some boot camp courses and that kind of shit. So again, there's some peddlers out there where it's like, oh, you know, take our boot camp, right? You will become a cybersecurity expert and will be able to get a job in cybersecurity, right? Take our course. It's $25,000. You'll have to take out a small loan, right? But after that, you'll be all good, right? And it's this unfortunately vacuous, bland content that doesn't really go anywhere, right? So I would say 549.
Christian, maybe I probably know better than anyone else about this.
Actually, yeah, you do, right?
Yeah.
Right, man.
So there's a lot to what you're saying, Christian. And recently, the Wall Street Journal actually did a article about this space. And my TA they tried to interview her to get her take on it. So these boot camps, I on one hand, being an instructor, I do think that I can provide value, but there's a part of me sometimes where there's a little bit of a moral pain that I feel as an instructor because I know pretty much what the students pay for the course, and what I have a general bad feeling about the education system, colleges in general, and I feel like they're marketing machines more than they are true education / academic machines. This is kind of an opinion that's been building when I got my master's about 13, 14 years ago. So this is what I generally think, that these programs take advantage of people who are, yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of these security jobs and there's this big gap of positions that are unfilled, and this company's going to get some of this boot camp for 6 months. I'm going to pay it's at least 10,000, right? It's probably closer to 15. And then when I get my piece of paper, my job's going to be presented to me. And what I tell my students on day one, I said, the only person that may care about that piece of paper is your mom. I go, no employer is going to care about it because you haven't proven that you can actually deal with security issues from this boot camp. You have to do a lot of extra work in these boot camps to prove yourself. You have to learn how to network. When I mean network, I don't mean TCP/IP. I'm talking about establishing connections, knowing how to talk the talk, because we all share a vocabulary, and knowing how to convince somebody that you can that they can hand their problems to you. That's difficult. Getting that first security break, probably everyone in this call can relate to that, is difficult. And a boot camp is not necessarily going to get you there. And Christian, you and I have been talking for about a year now. And one of the things where you and I think hit it off is a lot of like where we got to is being self-made. And I just wonder how many people that go through the boot camp machine are actually going to have, are they made of the stuff that's necessary to be a good security pro? Because let's face it, I mean, Travis, you and I've worked in a few pen tests, right?
Yep,
You don't
absolutely.
know, every pen test is different. You don't know what you're going to go into. There's a lot of things that are, tried and true and tested, but there's always going to be something. And the real security professional has to be able to adapt to that kind of unexpected. And I think boot camps, again, teaching it and seeing my students and seeing how long it takes them and the attrition rate. I love teaching, and I don't I'm probably disparaging what I'm doing to some degree, but there are a lot of inexpensive and free resources that if you just roll up your sleeves and had the initiative, I mean, you could build your own VMs. You could, Udemy has some, I've done it myself, like real cheap courses, Hack the Box and Try Hack Me, all these resources. So to me, if you stood up two candidates and one went through my boot camp and the other said, I learned all this because I went to YouTube University, I have my own lab, I learned how to do all these things, I probably would go with the latter. So I hope you guys aren't recording this and then sending it to my supervisors, but that's the truth. The person who really thrives and I think ends up in a great position on the other end of the boot camp is going to be the exception, not the norm. So I know I really went on, but I really, I got a lot of experience, and I'm in the middle of my fourth cohort, and I try to do the best I can to pull people forward and give them advice, the things that the program doesn't give. But it's really the self-made person is the one that's going to probably be the one I want to hire.
Yeah, so I guess one comment about that is I think that's why it's important to have these conversations, because there's a lot of promises out there and there's a lot of resources competing for your time, because time and resources and money are limited. You only have so much time for courses. So yeah, I'm trying to be a little more make better decisions about that, because
I think to chime in on that too, Bob, is it's so important, like Christian and Travis was talking about, and you brought it up too, is with networking, right? You wanna hire that young, hungry go-getter, the self-made guy, but 9 times out of 10, we never get to you guys. We get filtered out by ATS, we get filtered out by HR if we don't have those certain things, right? So it's so hard to learn how to network properly. I'm just now coming into doing that in the last 4 months, really, of doing things the right way, and stop slinging resumes and building relationships instead. So it's super important, because it's hard to get to you guys. That's not easy.
Yeah.
So what I was gonna let me see that Michael. Let me add one comment, for example, that some of my students told me from the boot camp is if you put boot camp on your resume, you might as well not send it. It's poisonous to say that you went to boot camp. So you've got to come up with other language. Like the company I work for does these courses on behalf of colleges. So I've taught on behalf of Northwestern and Ohio State. So what you do is you say it's a cybersecurity program through Ohio State or through Northwestern to try to at least take advantage of the name, the brand. But yeah, just applying, and I have a negative general feeling about HR departments, and they're really designed, I think, to perpetuate this kind of what I think is this academic phoniness that I can't stand. And how do you get the good people through the HR machine to the hiring manager? Really, the best way is, like you said, Michael, is how do you start going to meetups and to other things, or get creative and make that connection with the person, and you say, oh yeah, I met Michael at this meet. Boy, really impressed me. And oh yeah, he likes the same sports teams as me. You know what I'm saying? I'm telling you, that will matter more than that piece of paper. So the networking is really key. And then when you get through the networking, then you can kind of show them what you got. So it's been a while since I had to get my break. I got my breakthrough contacts once I got my first kind of IT job, and then it was internal. And then someone offered me a chance to go from, I was an exchange admin, NT administrator, and I had a friend, he's like, hey, I got a headcount in security. That's how I got the position, because I proved myself to him. He knew I got my shit done. That's how I got the field. I didn't go to some, boot camp or anything like that. So I'm very passionate about this topic. So when I saw the slides, when I came in the middle, I was like, ooh, this is right in my kind of wheelhouse, because
Hell yeah.
I'm on one hand, I'm really motivated to give people their first breaks, because I had to get one, and I've seen education going badly. When I got my master's, and this is going to sound like I'm not trying to say I'm the greatest security guy in the world. That's not what I'm saying. So let me just put that there. But I knew more than every instructor I had except one. And what I started doing was just chiming in, and I took the course and I tripled what I was doing because I was bored. So that's when I knew, wow, these people are going to pay $30,000 to get a master's, and they're unhireable. They're unhireable. They're exploiting people who are desperate for, I'll tell you, when I read the slides, one of the slides that I have to present when I teach this course says, hey, the average salary, according to, I think it's ISC squared, if I remember right, or it's ISAC, and one of them says, is $99,000 a year for the average security professional. That sounds great. Okay, so I'm going to take a boot camp and I'm going to get a $99,000 job. That's not how it works. So I feel like there's a fair amount of exploitation. So on day one, when I teach my cohort, I tell people, I go, if you think you're just going to go listen to me and turn in some homework and get a great job, you're going to be disappointed. So when you're after this class, you need to think about that, because you're going to have to do something extra to get there. It's the hands-on and the actual learning. It's not a passive type of learning where Bob says stuff, words go into ears, I'm a security pro. No, you got to, it's like learning to swim from a video. No, you got to jump in the pool.
Hell yeah.
Right? You got to do all the different strokes, same thing. So I know I'm getting preachy, but this is a really important topic, because I think it's not just education, but the proper advice. Again, Christian and I have had some great, I think he and I very kind of have a similar spirit, and, really passionate about learning, but also teaching at the same time. And so you see that with security people. Like I know Travis, for example, I've learned a lot of stuff from him just in a professional level because of the knowledge he's shared. So it's like, you want to learn, you want to teach. And I just feel like if we are in a position where we're meeting people who are new and they want to do something, we probably owe it to them and say, be smart with your money. Think like a CFO. You got a limited budget. What's the ROI on this stuff? What have other people who have gone through this actually done? So I think there's sort of I don't know. I feel like it's a mission for me. So I'm glad I jumped in tonight to do this because I want to share this information with everybody.
The insight's absolutely fantastic. And for everyone's further edification, Bob comes from not just the background, right, of teaching and educating people getting started in cybersecurity and growing their careers, but Bob comes from a background of running cybersecurity programs for businesses, right? So what we were talking a little bit about last week of like career skills, right, and how to get through like the bullshit of HR. So like, again, like having a good face and whatnot, but like after you get past that, right, and the key wording, right, it's all about real practical skills, right? Like Travis was also saying to, a little bit earlier, like you're not doing the skills tree, right? For the certifications before the paper, right? The amount of times when we get hired to break into multi-billion-dollar insurance companies and banks, that kind of stuff, where someone says, okay, and I got to see your certifications and tell me about all your certifications, is zero, right? Absolutely zero, right? It's talk to talk, walk to walk, get shit done, right? And so it's very, very infrequent, right? So no, thank you for hammering that away, Bob. And actually, that goes very much alongside with, I think, this element here of, here, let me just share out, plus a culture. There we go. So, this workspace that we created for you guys here, I was spiffing it up while Travis was doing a fantastic job of going through all the certifications with you guys. But one of the things that I put in here earlier when Travis and I were building out this initial workspace is beware. This is tough, right? You got to be motivated, right? Hardworking and persistent, right? So when somebody comes to me and they say, hey, I'm interested in cybersecurity and learning in cybersecurity and that kind of stuff, it's like, okay, how many hours a day are you putting in? If they can't measure the amount of hours per day they're putting in, if it's not even above an hour, they're going to have a tough time growing to being like an expert or a senior level person, right? While usually a lot of the quote unquote experts and senior level people, they have a genuine interest in poking and prodding and playing with technology in their free time, right? And they breathe it, right? And I could tell that there's a couple specific individuals here that are very much like that, right? And one of the ways that I try to kind of like convert people, right, from a, hey, here's a lay person and they're looking to get into cybersecurity more, is I always say, well, start applying it to your own life first, right? Think about how like your own life is held together with like duct tape and string, right? Why don't you secure your own life first, right? Are you still using the internet service provider, provided like router, modem, wireless access point combo? Well, throw that shit out. That shit is vulnerable. You got bad guys on your home network. Go fix it. Go build a real home network, right? Go buy a ubiquitous firewall. Learn how to configure it correctly. Set up some ACLs, right? Learn what an IPS is. Set up the IPS rules, right? Set up a honeypot on your network, right? Set up not just a Wi-Fi with a WPA2 or WP3 with or WPA3 with a strong pre-security. No, fuck that. Do 802.1x authentication backed with user accounts, right? Hell, if you want to go above and beyond, right, do EAP TLS with your own certs, right? And the only devices that can join your Wi-Fi have to have a certificate, right? Not even be able to be identified per user, right? Right. And so when people start to apply those principles to their own lives, right? Like, hey, what are you doing about security in your own workstation, right? What are you doing about security in your own life of scrubbing your information from the internet, right? Trusting all these people with your bank account details and all that kind of stuff. Apply it to yourself first, right? That kind of gets you motivated and playing with it. And then you like realize, wait, this is actually a really big problem. This is not just a career for me, right? But this is like a livelihood that like we live and breathe to help protect ourselves, our families, right? Our communities, right? From malicious actors, right? So I always found that it's been a good mechanism to kind of help people like dive into it, Any other good items, questions, concerns, thoughts, comments?
For God's sakes, put your home labs on your resumes too, guys.
Hell yeah.
Huge. Recruiters love that shit.
One of the questions I always like to ask people is, I'll very frequently ask people is, tell me, what's your PC, right? Tell me your custom ring. What do you run for your graphics card, right? Why is that important? Because that tells me how much of an enthusiast someone is or is not, right? Tell me about, okay, how'd you configure your home network, So 100%. Any other good comments? No? Okay, so Again, we're going to keep improving this. So we got some future topics to cover here. So we already just talked about this, right? Certifications and courses that are best bang for your buck in time, right? And again, building skills, right? Not just about getting the paper, right? One of the things that we want to do is we want to start going through some real world network, web, and mobile penetration testing exercises, right? Actual shit that Travis, myself, Dennis, right, get to do, right, on a day-to-day basis, right? Not even just going through like a metasplitable lab, that kind of stuff, right? One, you'll get to see us struggle too, which will be super hilarious and fun, right? Two, you'll be able to collaborate and chime in and we can work together, right? Three, it'll be a fun and educational experience where we can all learn together, right? And four, right, it'll help provide more practical hands-on skills, right? There's one thing of here's a video, right? Here's a guide, here's a resource, and then seeing it in person. Even when you watch a video of someone going through a pen testing lab or a set of pen testing exercises, or when you do Hack the Box or Try Hack Me and Hack the Box, fantastic. Don't get me wrong. They have fucking nothing on a real pen test, right, Travis?
It's not even close.
Not even fucking close, right? So it'll really help take that gap, right, and close that gap for a lot of folks, right? And try to take it to the next level. And hell, maybe we can learn something from a couple of you guys too, right? Pen testing project setup, right? So there's a lot of shit that's not the technical, right? This gets a little bit back to what Bob was saying, like with networking with people, right? So there's so many other elements of being a good cybersecurity professional, right? One of the things I tell people is like, if you can't communicate, you're not going to be a valuable cybersecurity professional, right? Fact of the matter is there's a ton of super intelligent people out there, right, that can identify vulnerabilities and weaknesses, that kind of stuff. But the problem is that once they get that information and they go to pass it to their supervisor or they go to pass it up, if it can't be communicated or how it's going to actually impact the business or impact that system or that environment or web application or whatever it may be, it's not communicated in a practical manner, it's understandable, it'll fall on deaf ears, right? And I've had that so many times, by the way, being a young person in my initial career of like, hey, I was a smart go-getter, right, who happened to know something, but I didn't know how to communicate it well enough. And I got really, really frustrated that I was really finding problems and trying to get the company to do things, but I couldn't instrument change in the business, right? So again, project setup, communications, report writing, providing good remediation recommendations, generic recommendations for risks fucking sucks, right? If you find that there are security headers, right, that are misconfigured, why, right? How to better practically fix those or implement those. So for example, if it's a CMS site that's a WordPress site, right, rather than saying to somebody, okay, and what you should do is you should implement HSTS by blah, 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 right? It's a very generic, hey, download this WordPress plugin, we'll use WordFence, right? And then click this box here. There you go. It gets all your security headers done, right? They didn't have to guess what the fuck you were trying to talk about, right? It's a very practical thing, right? Or you say, oh, well, this doesn't have HSTS on it, blah, 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 blah. You say, and what you need to do is implement HSTS on it, right? That's the recommendation. Well, what if it's a COTS system, commercially off-the-shelf solution or software or system, right? Like, I don't know, a Citrix NetScaler device. How the fuck do they fix that? You got to point them to the Citrix documentation. Hey, you go here in the Citrix configuration system, and this is where you configure those security headers, right? That's much more practical and helpful, so they don't have to guess what you mean, right? So that's a really important element that we'll get to down the line. So what we're going to do here, guys, feedback surveys right at the top. You can click that, right? And fill in all the deets in the doobly-doo here. Provide more information to us, how we can do better, other content that we can cover. Anyone who wants to cover their own content, talk about things, right? At the end of the day, we're not looking for everyone to be an absolute expert or anything like that on something. If you want to talk about something you feel confident about and you think it's going to provide value to other folks, call it out, let us know, right? And then Travis and myself will follow up with you and, put a, high level plan or agenda together, that kind of stuff. I think at this juncture, Andreas, you've been the only one who's done that outside of Travis and myself. You did a fantastic job covering a lot of Azure pen testing stuff. So that was like, you set the bar really well for everyone else on that. So anywho, to that, any last items here?
I would say, Christian, when you bring up the real world exercise that you want to do for future plans, is that a Go Vanguard sponsored bootcamp CTF? Is that what I'm understanding?
So that's the thing. So I was actually telling Mike before you had the opportunity of joining. So like we've had Matt at our company. He went to DEF CON. He was competing in CTS, right? You've done some CTS stuff. Mike's done some CTS stuff, right? I'm going to presume maybe a couple other folks have done it here. Believe it or not, I'm completely naive to the concepts of CTFs. I've never done a CTF. I've never seen a CTF. I don't know how those really work. And I was talking to Mike about how does that compare to like real exercises and real engagements, that kind of stuff. Like I am sincerely interested, right, in that. So I don't know if it'll be a Go Vanguard CTF. I want it to be a real Go Vanguard pen test, right? I want to set up a broken piece of shit, right? Or something that actually I think is a decent piece of shit, maybe, right? That's a Go Vanguard asset that we all try to break in together or something like that. I'd love to say we could choose one of our customers or something like that, but I don't know if they feel particularly comfortable of a community of individuals trying to tear apart their shit, right? But certainly I am happy to put in the Azure credits for hosting something that's moderately spooky. Maybe our Faraday security, maybe our Faraday security platform environment should be pen tested. Or once we relaunch Spearhead, we'll pen test the shit out of that, you know?
Hey, Travis.
Shane will love that. What's up, Mike?
Did you hear that? He said he's a piece of shit. I got just the web app for him.
we need something a little better than what you got, though. Yours was as complicated as a calculator.
That was awful, wasn't it?
So Dennis, yeah, a good note there. So if you got more ideas, Dennis, right, and suggestions, or if you feel like you want to run with something a little bit like that, have a little bit of fun with the team, be my guest, man.
I'll ping you a little later with my what was it, Takanashi's challenge, my 25-step CTF challenge. Yeah, we'll work on it some maybe.
This is fun. Okay, well then, team, this has been absolutely fantastic. Continue to spread the word, disseminate this. Soon enough, probably, I think, Travis, we'll start to open up a little bit further. But again, we'll have to remind people about the rules, right? House rules, being respectful, and that kind of stuff. And we'll probably have to enforce house rules if there's anyone like who jumps in who's kind of being disrespectful or condescending, kick their asses out, that kind of deal. And then we'll have to probably set up some format where we remind people, like in the beginning, hey, you're being recorded, that kind of stuff. So a little bit later on, we can host these. Right now, these are being recorded by Microsoft Teams guys. And Microsoft Teams isn't a very nice recording system. So we'll have to think about how we go to approach that in the future and where we're going to upload it and whatnot. If anyone has any ideas, feel free to throw it at us. I know a couple of folks who do like podcasting and video stuff and whatnot. Again, I don't want to turn it into something else, right? I like what we're doing here, right? And keeping it like a good balance between lecture and conversation, right? So to that, everyone, thank you so much for your time. Have a fantastic night. Bye now.
Take care.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.